we're taking away to provoke some sort of retaliatory act, such thing. Because of little money be taken, the whole country gets looted. Cannot be allowed. So we are in a very serious moment, and your observation is undoubtedly accurate that the war-related gatherings, we now hold them almost week by week. But none are boring, and none are like the previous ones, because something always happens. The conditions and situations are deteriorating at such a speed. I would say a few words about Russian assets, if you allow me, since earlier I talked about understanding complex things. I'm sure you hear a lot about it, but you might not know what it is. Now, the international practice in peacetime is that every country has a foreign exchange reserve. This means that there is their own money, because let's say Hungarians have the forint, but the forint is not accepted if we want to pay in other countries, so we convert a part of our wealth to currencies that are accepted, mostly dollars or euros, and this is in case our currency loses value. We use complex operations to protect the forint. This is called a foreign exchange reserve. Every country has one, and according to international financial regulations, it is usually mandatory that you cannot keep it in your own country. So the foreign exchange reserve must always be held in another secure country. Now, of course, it's hard to imagine that in the meantime, the Russians are negotiating with the Americans, and more than then the well-trained Russian president, equipped with proper knowledge from the old world, and some of the best businessmen are negotiating with each other, while 200 billion euros lie there unclaimed. What I mean by this is that one of the key questions in the Russian-American negotiations is what to do with this money. Moreover, the Russians and the Americans have already agreed on what to do with this money. There are publicly disclosed documents about this, so I'm not saying this based on peeking through the...
You know, it's interesting how he mentions, this is why it's so interesting and necessary to watch international news. He says Russians and Americans as if the Russians and Americans are working together behind the scenes, behind Europe's back. So he's basically saying that Europe, the EU, believes that America is low-key siding with Russia, because to them, if America steps back, that's like, basically they're like, well, look, if Europe gets, whatever happens to Europe, if Russia wants to take over, that has nothing to do with us. We're over here in North America and South America as well, because, America's down in Venezuela. So that is very interesting. But here's what's going on. The EU collectively decided that they are no longer going to revote on Russian assets being frozen. They decided to permanently freeze. This was just Friday. Over 210 billion euros or 246 billion USD in Russian foreign assets, which are currently being held in the EU. So this guy that's in Budapest, Hungary, he's Orban. I don't know who Orban is. He's the EU politician. He's frustrated with Brussels because Brussels decided, along with the EU, they are going to freeze Russia's foreign assets that are sitting in the EU. And so he's talking about how the Americans and the Russians are figuring out how to get Russia out of this or how to broker a peace deal. But we know the peace deal did not quite go as planned, since there was really no ceasefire and Ukraine actually upped the airstrikes with sending 83 missiles into Moscow.
Yes, it's if you really want to poke somebody, that's a good one. If you really want to poke the bear, right? Because Russia, they are the bear, right? That's pretty much their logo. They're the bear. If you really want to poke the bear, you better freeze their money
permanently.
They
wild. Said permanently.
That's wild. So basically, the EU is saying, we don't want to do business with you. We freezing 200 billion. And in the video, it kind of, I'll get to that later, but they have to have money in certain countries to have their business be lucrative, right? To have, you foreign exchange this, 200 billion worth. So I know that's a lot of money, but that's probably like a small percentage of Russia's money, but they really probably depend on that for foreign exchange, right? So, go ahead, you plug it in. So with this, it's kind of like just my opinion. It's kind of pushing digital money
But even if it's digital, they're freezing
or
it.
cryptocurrency in a way.
That belongs to Russia. Like they would have invested in their businesses, they're holding foreign exchanges,
I get what you're
and
saying,
they're freezing
but
it.
you gotta get what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's not gonna be no more reserves in a way where each country gotta have U.S. dollar reserve, euro reserve, pound reserve. You get what I'm saying? Australian dollar reserve or something like that. It's not. It's kind of pushing that way to cryptocurrency.
I mean, in a way, but it's also going to push gold up because guess what Russia's going to do? They're going to tighten their alliances with Africa. They're going to be like, okay, we need to start purchasing gold. China already dumped 853 billion in US bonds in exchange for gold. And that was last year. But just as we are playing this video, even more is coming out. So guys, listen to this. In France right now, this is so crazy. This is the major turn of events that Americans did not see coming because, again, Americans believe, before I tell you what this next video is that came out 13 hours ago, Americans believe that France, Germany, Belgium, the UK, all the folks are just America, 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 America. Mm-hmm. But this says otherwise because right now there are thousands in Paris, France, stating that they will not die for Ukraine, but they will instead support Russia. Let me repeat that. Thousands and thousands of people right now in Paris are protesting, not for the France government, not because their wages are too low, not because they're stressed. They're rallying for Russia in Paris, France, with Russian flags up. Check out the Times of India YouTube channel because we're going to play this Paris protest. I might have to do a separate video on this because this is crazy, or maybe I'll break down this live and chop it up into a separate video because this is insane and everybody that's in the West is like, everything's normal. Y'all ain't never seen nothing like this.
Yeah, I just, and it's crazy because I just did this video about, I said America versus everybody. That's what it's coming down to. That's really what it's coming down to because it's a lot of stuff going on in France right now. It's a lot. The farmers, they're like putting manure on Capitol buildings, police cars, on streets and stuff. And then this happens with the actual citizens, not even farmers. I'm pretty sure it's farmers too, but the citizens are actually in the streets protesting, saying we stand with Russia. So the European Union, which is like, it's really like everything is heating up. Everything's heating up in the kitchen. And you gotta realize how this ties into like, hey, I know a book, right? There's a book that says there's never been an attack on American soil in a way, right? Coming from like China or Russia and stuff. And I feel like this might be a time where that might happen. You know, right now with Venezuela in America and then Russia and China for Venezuela because they are sovereign nations where it's like, it's
December 15th, just a couple of days ago. Let's play the video because I had no idea.
Towards something very serious. Look at what the NATO Secretary General said yesterday. We must prepare for a war of the same scale as our grandparents and great-grandparents lived through. Many.
Pause. He says in Europe, in NATO, the United Alliance of European Nations and America said that we must prepare for a war the size of the one that our grandparents went through with World War I and II. Let's continue.
And real quick, let us know where you guys are tuning in from. Make sure you like the video if you appreciate this information because this is very, very important. This will affect you eventually because it's going to be America versus everybody. And if you plan on staying in America, you know, you got to get prepared in a way where you got to have discernment and know what's going on. So make sure you like the video. Make sure you leave a comment and let us know Where are you tuning in from?
If France sides with Russia, let's just continue. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down.
Except that the Third World War would be thermonuclear, meaning with at least 500 million deaths. Is that what we truly want, or do we just want to resume a somewhat normal and calm dialogue with a country called Russia?
Paris witnessed a powerful show of public anger as thousands of demonstrators poured into the streets for a national march for peace. The rally, organized by Florian Philippot's Patriots Party, unfolded in central Paris amid rising fears that Europe is drifting closer to a major war. Protesters gathered at Place de Barcelona before marching through the capital, waving French flags, lighting smoke flares, and chanting slogans demanding an end to military escalation and foreign entanglements. Placards carried through Paris sent a blunt message to the French leadership. Banners read, "Stop NATO's warmongering," Frexit, and "Macron, we will not die for Ukraine." Demonstrators accused.
Wow, they said Macron, and you can't be mad at them. They're like, we're not about to waste our lives to go and fight Ukraine. Like, y'all want to drag everybody into the war to fight Russia for Ukraine.
Accused NATO and the European Union of dragging France toward a conflict they say ordinary citizens do not want. Footage showed long columns of marchers moving through the streets as chants for peace, sovereignty, and dialogue echoed across the city. Addressing the crowd, Patriots Party leader Florian Philippot warned that Europe was heading toward a dangerous turning point. He said European institutions were pushing nations toward a conflict of historic proportions. Philippot cited recent comments by NATO's Secretary General warning that Europe must prepare for a war comparable to the world wars of the last century. He questioned whether Europeans truly wanted such a future, or whether dialogue with Russia.
I think the only thing they're missing in all of this is it is inevitable from a prophetic standpoint. This war, no matter how it turns out, no matter who's taking whose side, is going to happen. Ezekiel 36 and 38. It's going to go down. Either way you spin it, no matter if France is siding with Russia, if America just has Venezuela helping them because they're the new colonizer, no matter how it turns out, it's going to happen to the Western empires and nations, either way it goes. So if there was ever a time to decide quickly to get to the global south, it's literally today. Because they're telling their citizens in the EU, and best believe, because we've seen so many people from the EU fleeing to go to Africa, not just when we've been in Mauritius. They do it in Tanzania as well. They do it in Kenya. They do it in Namibia. Best believe if they have the ability to leave, which a lot of them do, or the mental plan, they're like, oh, we're not going to go through this again. We're going to get to safety because they understand how to look back at history and to see what's coming. It may not always be from a biblical standpoint, but they're so more so looking at World Wars I and II and saying, oh, I see some of these things repeating. While in America,